Hey guys, Omni here. We're going to be checking out New Rockstar's breakdown of the Book of Boba Fett Episode 3, because there's a couple things throughout this that I kind of have some questions about that I'm not 100% certain on. One of the reasons also, because I've had a couple of people ask and wonder if I was going to be reacting to the breakdowns for the Book of Boba Fett episodes, because it's something we do over on the Marvel shows that we cover usually, is to see all the hidden details and things we missed in those, because mostly for me, because I'm not as familiar with the Marvel Universe as a casual fan. I was more of a DC guy growing up, so I'm more familiar with a lot of those things. And when it comes to Marvel, a lot of my intro has been the MCU, other than the other live-action films, obviously, that predated it, and the animated series like Spider-Man and X-Men. Those I all watched, but I was never really deep into the comics. I was more into DC and stuff. So a lot of that stuff easily was going to be going over my head. However, from birth, dang near from birth, I've been steeped in Star Wars. So a lot of the time, I'm not missing much most of the time, unless it's some obscure stuff or, you know, a Clone Wars episode, maybe that I forgot or something like that, because there's a lot of those. So far up to this point, I've pretty much been pretty on the nose for most things, except for Black Krrsantan, because that's a character that I wasn't familiar with, and I mentioned that in the beginning of the last reaction up until now, because he was introduced more recently, and I haven't kept up with any of the canon comics since the takeover and all that stuff, except for a few here and there when I was trying to wrap my head around everything. So that being said, though, this last episode, I figured, okay, there's a couple things in here I'm not 100% sure on. So we will do a thing. I don't know if we'll do it every episode, but we'll follow along and we'll see how it goes. But guys, let's go ahead and jump into this. If you're not subscribed to New Rockstars, do so, because these guys put in some heavy work into doing these breakdowns. So let's go ahead and jump right in. Here we go.
Welcome back to New Rockstars. I'm Eric Voss, and this is a breakdown of the Book of Boba Fett Episode 3, The Streets of Mos Espa. Streets that are filled with Lucasfilm's toy box of Star Wars Easter eggs. So as always, I'm going to break down this episode shot by shot for all the interesting filmmaking details throughout the episode that you might have overlooked. The episode opens outside of the palace as a BT-16 spider droid crawls past. We actually saw one of these at the palace gate in Return of the Jedi. It has a bowl dangling underneath containing a sloshing brain, because these droids are used by the Bomar monks of Tatooine, who transfer their brains to the droid as a higher state of enlightenment detached from earthly senses. Actually, in Star Wars Expanded Universe literature, which is no longer canon, Bib Fortuna met his end when he joins those monks and then gets his brain sucked out. And while these shows animated,
if I remember right, they were the original, like, denizens of Jabba's palace before he moved in. Like, it used to be their monastery, is something I also kind of remember. Maybe I'm pulling that from somewhere else, but I think that's right. But
are certainly capable of animating the droid's movement to look smoother. It looks like they deliberately rendered it with a lower frame rate to better evoke the stop-motion-y movement that was used in the original trilogy films.
For sure.
The way that kind of motion would make our skin crawl. Notice how as it moves,
I love
the
the way
droid
they made it
randomly
move.
snaps that lower claw. Like, out of my way, I am a monk, but I will cut you. 88 breaks down the Mos Espa criminal network.
And here you see the businesses that were under the protection of the name that should not be spoken.
You can say Jabba.
Under the protection of Jabba the Hutt.
Yeah, I like how the droid awkwardly tilts its head, matching the mannerisms of voice actor Matt Berry. And then he goes on to say,
man, I need to get back into
After a
what we do in the shadows,
there was a
man.
power vacuum.
I'm so behind.
And Fortuna assumed Jabba's mantle.
yeah, 88 calls it the sail barge disaster, rebranded it from how we saw it. Luke, Han, Leia, Chewie, and Lando's heroic escape, and yeah, awesome! To a humiliating structural collapse from Bib Fortuna's certain point of view. 88 explains,
Mos Espa was divided amongst three families. The Trandoshans took the city's center, the Aquilish, the workers' district here, and the Clatoonians, the Starport and Upper Sprawl.
hey, don't forget the Tartaglias of Staten Island. Episode 1 actually showed the Trandoshan leader, Doc Strassi, presenting a Wookiee pelt, and the other Trandoshans glared at them as they returned to the city center last episode. The Aquilish leader was Garfala Quax, who also presented a tribute. But we have not seen the leadership from the Clatoonians yet. Trailer footage does show a Clatoonian at Boba's table, though. They discussed
I can't
the
wait
blow to
for that
Boba's
scene,
reputation
man.
from the Nightwind assassin strike.
Mayor has no power. Somebody else is behind that play.
The Hutts.
Could be. You want me to ask around?
Yeah, if it wasn't the Hutts behind the Nightwind, it could have just been the Pike Syndicate, but it does seem like this show is still setting this up as a mystery orchestrated by some unseen
Crimson
boss
Dawn.
of bosses, which is why I think it is at least still worth considering options like a Crimson Dawn operation headed
Or
up
maybe
by
a new
Kira.
head of the Shadow
Watermonger
Collective.
Lortha Peel is played by amazing character actor Stephen Root, just as pissed at those youths stealing his water as when Lumberg stole his stapler.
I believe you have my stapler.
And here he says,
Never
Since
seen
Lord
that movie,
Fortuna
man.
was
I know it's a disappointment.
perished, the streets have turned to chaos.
yeah, I love the acting redirect by Root there. Clearly about to say Lord Fortuna was assassinated, but he catches himself not wanting to call Boba Fett a usurper to his face, even though that is what he is. Peel apparently came with a catchphrase that he clearly rehearsed.
And I am insulted on your behalf at the disrespect these urchins are showing you. And I am insulted on your behalf.
Yeah, I'm insulted on your behalf. Yeah, that will convince him. Boba says,
I grew up surrounded by water.
Well, Tatooine was once completely covered with water. It's fascinating, actually.
And what is this gang?
No, let that man speak. It is fascinating.
Yeah,
Like the Tuskens
I would love to
mentioned
hear
last
more about
episode,
it.
In Legends, Tatooine's climate change was a result of a planet-wide bombing by the Rakatans, but the exact backstory remains a mystery in current Star Wars canon. Interesting how they keep bringing it up, though. We make it
The
fuller story
Rakatans
in the
kind of
series.
make
Peel
things like
describes the
really.
gang.
Yeah.
The Rakatan backstory and involvement in the galaxy is a little convoluted. I think that's what I was trying to say, but we'll see. I think they're obviously leaving it vague because maybe they want to leave that open for whatever they decide to do in the future, or it's just to not overwrite anything that they might use down the line, or just keep it vague so nobody can really like discount the Legends stuff like that. So leaves it open for everybody to think what they want.
Half man, half machine. They modify their bodies with droid parts to make themselves even more deadly.
Yes, Peel's
I love the
disgust
way
is a bit
he, like, gives this
unfounded.
monologue,
Tons of
though.
folks in the Star Wars universe have cybernetic implants, including the woman he is talking to, Fennec Shand, who
Yeah.
glares at him as he says this, but maybe he's referring to unnecessary cybernetic enhancements instead of cybernetics used as prosthetics. So they head into the workers' district of Mos Espa. You can see all the Aqualishes in the area, and they come across those youths whose look in chrome-colored bikes seem inspired directly by the mods and rockers of London in the 1960s.
I had so many people being like, dude, do you not know about modders? Do you not know about Vespas? Do you not know about UK? And I'm like, no, I don't. I swear I've never heard the term Vespa, and maybe I'm just uncultured or something, but I've never even heard, like, in the 30 odd years I've been alive, the term Vespa until I saw Pixar's Luca. So I'm sorry.
Who rode similarly colorful and souped-up bikes. Their leader is Drash, played
But
by
damn,
Sophie
they really
Thatcher.
do
May have
look
seen
like
her in
it.
Yellow Jackets. Another one has a cybernetic eye, which looks like the same prop that was seen on that Namordian officer in the Trade Federation battleship in
Similar
Phantom Menace.
design.
Boba surprises them by offering them jobs.
You better fight as good as you talk, Dank.
Yes, Dank, part of the profanity Dank Ferric, which we actually hear later this episode, and has come up repeatedly on The Mandalorian.
Dink Ferric.
Now I need to know what
Peel,
dank
who is clearly
translates
listening
to.
in on all this, is outraged.
No! They stole from me! And you're just going to let them off?
And Boba pisses him off further by giving him only 500 credits instead of his overcharged rate of 1,300, leaving the guy fuming.
Okay, but I could set the building on fire.
You may have also caught how Boba tells
What
Drash
the
to
fuck?
have the rest of her GAC follow him. GAC was a behind-the-scenes term among Star Wars crew members for random bits of tech, according to Lucasfilm's Phil Sostak. Then in this shot outside the palace, you see that wart species that we
Still
also
there.
saw last episode returns here to catch a scurrier, just like it did in that one establishing shot in Return of the Jedi. But this time, it snatches both the scurrier and this reptilian bat, showing why it waited to let that scurrier get so close. And also, like the spider droid, you'll notice notice the wart's movement and its burp had that same kind of stop-motion-y frame rate as the gag back in 1983. Boba's flashback returns him to Kamino as his clone father Jango's ship departs and leaves him behind.
Oh,
we
Eric,
saw a flash
you
of
killed me.
this during his lizard quest last episode, and as before, the departing ship forms a teardrop shape on his face, but now young Boba's face, with a thunderclap, flashes into his older reflection, and as the light of Jango's ship exhaust fades, the light of 2 Tatooine suns crossfade into the frame. And now we see Boba, a full member of the Tusken tribe, riding a bantha with both a gaffy stick and the Tusken rifle that we saw him with in Mandalorian Chapter 9, into the town of Mos Eisley, where stormtrooper helmets are stuck on pikes, just as we saw in the Mandalorian Chapter 5. This is the moment they put those in place. And you'll notice behind the spikes, a cameo by Peli Moto, Amy Sedaris' mechanic from that episode and from Season 2, trailed by her 2 pit droids. So
that
Boba
doesn't
meets
actually
with a
look
Pike
like her,
leader,
though.
who is played by
Like,
Phil
they might have
Lamar,
used a
who voiced
stand-in
Bail Organa
for
and a
to
number
be
of
out
other
of
characters
focus
on
in the
Clone Wars
back,
and
but-
Rebels. He also voiced Hermes on Futurama, Marvin in Pulp Fiction, and that one uncredited cameo where he caught Peter Parker on the train in Spider-Man 2. Now notice how the Pikes leader's robes bear this sigil that is not the crest that we have normally associated with the Pikes. It actually kind of looks like a Death Star fracturing, which would correspond to that anti-imperial propaganda of those stormtrooper helmets that these Pikes might be using to exert their new dominance in these Outer Rim regions. The Pike mentions his superiors on Obi-Daya, that's the Pike homeworld that was shown in Season 6 and in Season 7 episodes of Clone Wars, and then he says,
"The Kintan Striders have already collected protection money for the same territory you lay claim to."
Yes, the Kintan Striders are their names. Kintan is the home world of the Nikto species. But Boba returns to the Tusken camp, and just like Luke returning to Uncle Owen and Aunt Beru on the moisture farm, he discovers his family massacred. They totally got the Anakin Skywalker treatment, but the women and the children slaughtered like animals. Some of their bodies are strung up to their tent poles almost crucifixion style, as if to send a cruel, deliberate message to Boba Fett. And on these smoldering ruins is that Kintan Strider tag that we saw them mark on the moisture farm. But I gotta say, we are still left to wonder if that gang did this as raw retaliation for Boba's attack at the Tashi station, or if they had a similar meeting with the Pikes, and the Pikes might have been the ones to tell them to do this.
See, that's what I thought initially, but then of course, I've seen a couple people brought up a good point that it could be maybe the Pikes had done it themselves and placed the blame on the Raiders, framing them for this action to set Boba against them while they're the ones making all these major plays. I don't know. I mean, that's a good theory, but I thought it was, I just took the straightforward answer with it. So I'd be curious to see what it ends up being, though.
Actually, in that flashback of them from episode 1, the gang's leader's vest has an Aurebesh in red at the bottom, the name ANK, it looks like. We know from last episode that another was named Emmet. Now, we see the chieftain's corpse and his gaffy stick that Boba later throws on the fire.
We don't see
but
his
it was
trainer.
hard to see if there were the corpses of that female warrior or the kid on that pile.
They were not in any of the shots. I combed them. I didn't see them. They easily could have been hidden behind one of the things of debris, but that would have been something you'd point out. Like, that Boba would have sought out, I would feel like. Especially considering he takes the kid's staff and puts it into the fire. Like, that might be left behind. But I feel like we would have got a shot of more than just the chieftain, because he spent maybe the least time with the chieftain. Come on. Either they're still alive, or who knows? Maybe they were part of it. I don't believe that. That was just throwing that out there. Anyway, run.
Now, Boba does throw a few more gaffy sticks on the fire. None of them looks like the one that the female warrior sparred against him with. There was that smaller stick that Boba got from the kid at the end of episode 1, but in this episode, that kid was holding a different stick. So I don't know. I have hope, at least, that the...
So I was right. It was his stick by, transference. I was like, he threw his first stick down there. You're like, nah, it was the kid's. I was like, technically, I'm just fucking with you. I know, some people just take things too seriously.
The 2 Tuskens he was closest with are still alive out there, because it's the one thing they can't take away from us.
hope.
But this somber meditative moment is rudely awakened by Black Krrsantan grabbing Boba out of the back to tank. Gotta say, super
Literally got a
brave
bit of a
Boba
like
to go all
jarring
Eastern promises
reaction out
and
of me.
still lunge at BK's leg instead of what I would do, run the hell out of the room. BK electrifies his brass knuckles, which are on top of the metal that was already injected into his knuckles from his gladiator days, and he wallops Boba's face, releasing an impact blast. Insane that this hook doesn't immediately kill Boba. I guess the healing nutrients from that back to bath left him with a bit more protection, or maybe just some plot armor. But I love this detail. As we saw on the train last episode, when Boba's technological approaches fail as he fumbles with his armor, he instead reaches for the gaffy stick, and that actually leaves a mark on that Wookiee. Later on, effectively digging into his shoulder, and when he pulls it out of his shoulder and goes for the leg, getting a nasty roar out of the Wookiee. Tusken tools working.
And then again, getting his head fucking rammed into the back to chamber, like tossed across that room head first into that table, man.
More effectively than supposedly more advanced tech. There's something about that tree, baby. BK bites Boba's arm, and as he dangles him, this might have just been Tamura doing something with his foot, but a close-up does grossly show one of his toes bent upward.
I mean, I could feel that being like a
jumps in to help out, and then BK turns on those
reaction, but yeah, I thought maybe he broke a toe for a second until I watched it again.
Yeah, I love the sound design of this brawl. The Gamorrean squeals, as we heard in Return of the Jedi, and BK bellows a Wookiee howl, evoking Chewbacca's cries of anguish. So Fennec has to pull the trap door, but BK grabs that ledge like Ralphie not ready to leave Santa.
Ho, ho, ho.
So Fennec pulls a dagger from
Don't
the
worry,
rifle
I've seen
and
that
pries Sam
movie.
Loose. I love how that dagger remains wedged in his hand down in the pit. He does not care. Their dining table has some roasted Nuna, a food that we've seen in Star Wars before. Also some type of squid dish. There's also a big gourd of blue spatchka in the middle of the table. And then the Hutt twins appear at the gate. They seem to apologize for sending Black Krrsantan to kill them. I love how that male twin, after mopping himself with that rodent, just tosses it aside like a sweat rag. And they give him a Rancor, wrangled by Danny Trejo, longtime collaborator of director Robert Rodriguez. They float in.
This is the true sequel? Prequel to Machete.
On an anti-gravity barge that that Litter looked over at like, oh, come on.
A long time ago,
the Hutts claim that the mayor promised this territory to another syndicate, and the Hutts are now leaving to avoid a turf war, but it's just hard to take them at their word. I mean, not to look a gift Rancor in the mouth, but I am betting these Hutts aren't being entirely sincere with this offer and might have carved out their own side deal with the Pikes or whatever Crimson Dawn body oversees this. Like, notice their non-response here.
Here is your prisoner. I offer him back if you renounce all claims to Jabba's legacy on Tatooine.
On Iluxi and Rimashuk.
Tatooine dupadudarame.
I think they know more than they're letting on, but I do think that they are genuine in this exchange. Because it doesn't make sense to me why you could make a show of good faith, but giving a Rancor and a bounty hunter as renowned as Black Krrsantan, because they're like, you can keep the Wookiee too if you want. Like, as that, like, that's just a little bit too much. This just seems like you're equipping the guy a little too much than you'd be willing to if you were actually just, doing a little something shady on the side. I think they know what's going on. Or at least they realized what's going on, and they were like, we're just gonna take a step back. We don't want none of that.
Yeah, in the same beat, these two Hutts both slyly refuse to renounce Jabba's claim, but also suggest that Tatooine is worthless, but we all know it isn't worthless. And then the female Hutt says,
Adwara Wookiee patalopagaba.
Referring to those Zonti brothers who enslaved BK early on and used him as a gladiator. But to BK's surprise, Boba releases him.
Take it from an ex-bounty hunter. Don't work for Skugholes. It's not worth it.
Yes, Skughole is a crass term we heard in The Mandalorian as well.
See, Sorgan. Looks like there's no starport, no industrial centers, no population density. Real backwater Skughole.
And then down in the pit, the Wrangler explains that the Rancor is actually depressed.
Rancor are emotionally complex creatures. It imprints on the first human it sees. They're quite peaceful and less threatened.
I love how this scene builds on the complexities of the Rancor species, which Return of the Jedi gave us just a taste of when the Wrangler Malakili wept after Luke killed his Rancor Batista. And then the Wrangler says,
It is said that the witches of Dathomir even rode them through the forest and fens.
yes, the Witches of Dathomir originally comes from Star Wars Legends literature, a female cult on the planet Dathomir created in the memory of a rogue Jedi Knight, Alia, and this cult, generation after generation, forged a bond with the Rancors of the mountains of the planet. Now, Star Wars canon in more recent years has reframed the Witches of Dathomir as sects, as groups like the Night Sisters from Clone Wars, who were led by Maul's mother, Talzin, who helped restore his body. But here, using the term Witches of Dathomir returns the group to its original history context and sets up the possibility that we could see them in live action.
Witches.
My
they
hope
were still
is
a
that this
coven
group shows up
of
in
witches.
Acolyte,
So
which is supposed to be set even before the prequels. Boba says,
I want to learn to ride this one. I've ridden beasts 10 times its size.
this is a callback to the Star Wars Holiday Special in 1978, which was the debut of the Boba Fett character in that animated segment when he rode a massive reptilian creature. In that cartoon, the forked staff that he carried looks like the same prodder now carried by Danny Trejo. And remember, in Bad Batch, Omega, who was another Jango clone, rode the Mancor Muchi. So riding Mancors is something that runs in this family.
Did he just say Mancor?
Omega, who was another Jango clone, rode the Mancor Muchi.
Yeah,
so
he did. He said
riding
Mancor.
is something that runs in this family. This Rancor adorably imprints on Boba, and then he orders it to be fed a full Ronto carcass. Rontos are the huge pack animals, one of whom George Lucas added to Mos Eisley in the 1997 special edition of A New Hope. Back at the mayor's office, the Major Domo tries to send them off again, and then he just totally tries to duck out on his speeder. Get up! I like how right as Fennec shouts, that nervous Major Domo swerves his speeder and kicks up a bunch of dust to make it harder for them to follow. They blow past this frazzled protocol droid. Yeah, sounded like the droid screamed, "Curse you!" at them. And this
I heard
reminds me a
"Oh
lot of
no."
that opening police chase of Goonies, where poor Rosalita is almost hit. We see a bunch of mouse droids buzzing around, and then a
I haven't
pit
seen
droid
Goonies.
ducks, but nearby is that same R5-D4 red astromech with the busted motivator that we saw with Pelimoto in season 2, originally nearly bought by Owen and Luke from the Jawas in The New Hope. As they pass, that pit droid pops back up and jeers at them. The cyborgs use their go-go gadgets, spike heels, and wrist torches, and then one crashes through this painting. This
Great
is
minds,
original
man.
Ralph McQuarrie art depicting Jabba's throne room from the original trilogy. However, notice how Luke Skywalker has been removed from this rendition. This comes right after we saw Ralph McQuarrie art inspiring the Tusken Armory last episode.
I didn't know that was
They
a
zoom
McQuarrie
past a few
piece.
bits carted by an ESPSA droid, just like the one that carted Anakin and Padme when they visited Mos Espa and Attack of the Clones. I love how it speeds up so that its passengers get hit instead of him. Drash crashes the Major Domo into a fruit market where, like Biff and Back to the Future, crap just spills all over him. But in this case, it is the Mailerun fruit seen throughout the animated series and now in live action. I think we also saw Mailerun on the menu in the cafe in the Mandalorian season 2 finale. The Major Domo tries to restart the engine.
I remember them calling that out in their last
That sound
breakdown
effect
for that.
of his dead speeder
last
engine
season.
is the same real-life plane engine sound effect used in the original trilogy when the Falcon fails to start an Empire.
Oh yeah? Watch this.
Also in the prequels when Anakin's pod racer stalled. The Major Domo confesses that the mayor is working with the Pikes. And then we get a Lucasfilm circle wipe to the spaceport of Mos Espa, which we learned at the beginning of this episode was controlled by the Clatoonians, so that's where things are headed next. And then we see another Haskins, some revealing outerwear, passing the Starliner where several Pikes have arrived. And Boba and Fennec prepare to go to war. That's everything I spotted this episode. You can support New Rockstars by checking out our merch options at newrockstarsmerch.com. Follow me on
Check
Instagram,
them out,
Twitter,
man.
at EA
Follow
Boss.
them.
Follow New
Subscribe to
Rockstars.
these guys,
Subscribe to
man.
New Rockstars.
Anyway, great breakdown. Yeah, okay. I think we covered what I was kind of looking for. But yeah, I really like the episode. I know a lot of people were kind of like put off by it. You know, I know a lot of people were complained about the scooters the most. I think that was them and the modders, I think, were the people they were complaining about the most. It didn't bother me. Their aesthetic, while obviously the suit and tie one I thought was a little more distracting than the speeders themselves, the guy in the just suit and tie. was the one that was a little too contemporary in my opinion. But the rest of them, they look like they fit in a Coruscant. And the speeders, while they very much so look out of place on Tatooine, they're not out of place like if you were at Coruscant. If you go back and look at like Attack of the Clones or Revenge of the Sith or any of those when they're on Coruscant, a lot of the vehicles there have a very similar design, coloration, bright, colorful designs and whatnot, as well as like people with these more contemporary designs and stuff like that. So it just seems like there are a bunch of kids from a backwater place wanting to not be seen as backwater. Like, it's like I grew up in like a rural West Virginia, so obviously being like someone from Appalachia, that it was always my goal, was to not, if I was to go somewhere else, to not be easily identifiable to where I was from because of the connotations of where you come from, or that longing for being somewhere else, or that admiration you have for a different land or something like that. So I definitely see like that parallel and that draw there. So I'm fine with that. Plus, again, while I was like, oh, it was a little off-putting at first, like I did check myself later when I reminded myself rather that, wait a minute, in Attack of the Clones, we had a 50s style diner that Obi-Wan went to, so it's not that far-fetched. I mean, these movies are based on things from real life. A lot of things evoke imagery from things in real life, so it's not unheard of. It's just the first time we've seen something like this in Star Wars, and that's fine. I think some people are just get a little too up in arms when something too different comes out of nowhere, when these things are just kind of, there's so many different planets, species, places, technologies. There's just always going to be something different to expect. So I don't know. I will say, though, that the chase itself was way too slow to be as exciting as I think they wanted it to be. They did it practically for the most part, but like, yeah, it was just like, it was definitely a slow speed chase, slower than I thought it's like a speeder chase would be. But other than that, I thought the episode was fine. But guys, what'd you think? Sound out the comments. Let me know your thoughts down below. We'll carry on the conversation after the video. Feel free to join our Discord. We can talk about it there as well. Links to that on my socials down below. And speaking of, before you go, I want to shout out our channel legends: Manny Sherritt, Ryan Karen, Jason Coleman, Philly Vane, Yuri, Corey Scott, Margaret Grace, Mary Bradley, Jeffrey Hale, and Nate Proudy. Thank you guys so much for your continued support. But that's it for now, and I'll see you guys in the next video. May the Force be with you always. Take care, everybody.